This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor of the District of North Vancouver, and the pleasure falls to me to welcome everybody here to our regular meeting of council for Monday, March 21st at 7 o'clock. This meeting is being held in a hybrid format, which means that all participants, staff, council, or members of the public are able to participate either virtually or in person here in the council chamber. In doing so, we hope everybody has a reasonably easy opportunity to be able to join us for our regular meeting of council. I did also want to mention that some of the public health orders have been updated lately, that you are not required to wear a mask while in the council chamber, but we will remain a mask-friendly community, and that people are welcome to exceed the requirements should they so choose. But we have, if you are a primary speaker, then you are definitely welcome to take off your mask as well. It does make it easier for some people to be able to understand it. Okay, council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will someone please move the adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Vac, second by Councillor Forbes. I'll call the question on the matter. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carries. Thank you very much, council. Council, just want to affirm that we have a set of minutes. This is the March 1st public hearing. Will somebody please move adoption, or sorry, are there any errors or omissions from the minutes as presented? Hearing none, will someone move adoption of the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Kern, second by Councillor Vac. I'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Okay, council, at the beginning of every regular meeting of council, we reserve a period of up to 30 minutes of time for members of the public to come and share their concerns with the council. Members of the public are welcome to address matters of interest to them for a period of up to 3 minutes at the front end. And I'm just double checking with the clerks. I don't have the printed list here in front of me. If I can grab that, that'd be great. Thank you. And so earlier in the week, people had an opportunity to sign up through the clerk's department, but the 30 minutes of time, if there won't elapse, so I only have 3 people that have signed up to speak during that time. Once I've gone through those, then I'll check back in with members of the public participating virtually or in person and see if anyone would like to add their name to the list. At this point, the first speaker is Emily Pickett, followed by Carrie Eilers. Emily Pickett, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm speaking this evening on behalf of the Vancouver Humane Society in support of this recommendation. As noted in Councillor Curran's report, VHS has supported North Shore students and schools for a number of years now in embracing meat reduction initiatives like Meatless Monday. Most recently, this also included a delegation presentation to District Council prior to the pandemic, encouraging a shift in municipal food purchasing policies toward more sustainable, healthy, and humane plant-based food. The suggestion at that time was similar to the recommendation being presented today, a minimum 20% reduction in the volume of animal-based foods purchased to be replaced with plant-based foods that do not contain any animal ingredients. A growing body of research has established that our food system and animal agriculture in particular is a major contributor to environmental issues, including climate change. And experts have called for a shift in our food system and consumption toward less animal products and more plant-based foods. In fact, this transition is necessary if we're to meet our international climate change commitments and to prevent dangerous levels of global warming, and as well as to feed a growing human population. It will take government action at all levels and in all sizes of municipalities to support this crucial shift in our food system. And the importance of this issue prompted the VHS to commission a report called Increasing Plant-Based Purchasing at the Municipal Level, which included a case study of a 20% shift in food purchasing for the city of Vancouver. And that report highlighted a number of financial, environmental, and animal welfare benefits. And it prompted actually a recent Vancouver City Council motion in support of exploring a minimum 20% shift as well, which I'm pleased to report was passed unanimously by a Vancouver City Council. And I think this sets a really important precedent for other municipalities to follow as well. District of North Vancouver Council has previously acknowledged through participation in initiatives like Meatless Monday, the role and the impact that local efforts play in responding to climate change. Exploring the opportunity to shift municipal food purchasing in this way is a very reasonable, achievable, and crucial next step in the right direction when it comes to helping create a more sustainable, healthy, and humane food system. And that concludes my time. So thank you for your time and consideration of this motion.
Thank you, Emily Pickett. The next speaker is Carrie Eilers, followed by Benjamin Hagerty. Carrie Eilers, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm just starting my video. Hi there. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm going to be a little bit more data oriented in my speech. I too support the climate action of transitioning from plant-based, from animal-based foods to plant-based alternatives. As a 30-year resident of North Vancouver, I actually was very pleased to see that the corporate plan for the District of North Vancouver did have a goal of leading in climate emergency action. And under the third priority, it indicated that you want to take action by reducing emissions. And I think we have an opportunity here that we haven't taken yet. And that opportunity is related to the food that's purchased by the District of North Vancouver. So I'm going to cover off a bit of statistics here because I love data. So when it comes to animal-based food, when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions, plant-based products are 10 to 50 times lower in the greenhouse gas emissions, in CO2 emissions, than most animal-based products. When you take a look at the complete picture of agriculture and how many greenhouse gases come out of that, and transportation, they are very similar. But there is a real push to do things in transportation and other areas which need infrastructure, need time, need money. Yet when it comes to agriculture, where 57% of the CO2 emissions come from animal-based food, we have done very little. And as individuals, we could make that decision tomorrow on our plates without a tremendous amount of infrastructure put in place. And as a council, you can take leadership by also making that change with the funds that you put forward for food purchases. Our current world biomass when it comes to animals is 60% livestock, 36% human, and a paltry 5% for wildlife. We have almost twice as much livestock and biomass as we do humans. There's a really big imbalance here. And livestock takes up nearly 80% of global agricultural land and produces 18% of the world's supply of calories. This, in so many ways, does not make sense for our continuing in our future. So a lot of people get concerned about protein. And when you look at greenhouse gas emissions between 100 grams of protein and animal proteins versus plant-based, beef is the highest, of course, at 50 kilograms per 100 grams of protein, 50 kilograms of emissions. And eggs come in as the lowest amount at 4.1%. Yet under plant proteins, the worst offender is grains at 2.7 kilograms of emissions for 100 grams of protein. So the worst plant-based emitter is almost half of the best animal protein-based emitter. And then finally,
oh, sorry, your time is up. If you want to just quickly draw to a close.
okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. The next speaker I have is Benjamin Hagerty. Benjamin Hagerty, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. And hello, Mayor Little and council members, and thank you so much for affording me your time and attention. As was just said, my name is Ben Hagerty. I'm a resident of the district, and I am a grad student at UNBC who is studying vegan tourism and business in the Vancouver area. I also co-own a plant-based travel guide website with my wife. I am speaking to you today in support of the initiative to transition from animal to plant-based food products as proposed by Councillor Curran. When people visit Vancouver, the places on the North Shore are typically on the top 5 of activities of what they want to do. This includes Capilano Bridge, Lonsdale Key, Rouse Mountain, Cypress Mountain, etc. We all know what those places are. The problem is that there aren't any fully plant-based restaurants that are easy to visit near any of these destinations along the North Shore. Now, sure, there might be some smoothie options and things like that, but they aren't full dining, which means that people can't feel nourished or feel like they're being accommodated in going to these places. Vegetarians, vegans, and anyone who just wants to be more plant conscious or have other dietary restrictions in our community are always hunting for more options. And oftentimes they have to go into the city to do that. And places in the city that have more of these options are Mount Pleasant, Riley Park, and Main Street and downtown Vancouver, etc. And if people want to visit for, say, just 2 days, then they may have no choice but to skip the North Shore entirely because they feel like they can't get eat and sustenance here, even if they do love the hiking and the ambiance. So what this means, though, and which is a detriment that I think we all need to acknowledge, is that this means less tourism revenue to the North Shore from thousands of veggie and vegan travelers per year. Therefore, if we had more plant-based restaurants and businesses available throughout the North Shore and closer to these destinations, then those travelers will want to stay, spend more time, and spend more money. So therefore, if we have more plant-based businesses, people will feel more comfortable, feel like they're being accommodated, and feel more valued, and they'll want to spend more time and money here. So I truly implore all of you to support that initiative, and let's make the North Shore a plant-based destination that's on par or even rivaling that of Vancouver proper. I know we can do it, and I know that there's a great opportunity to do so, because I would love nothing more than to send my thousands of readers to the North Shore with a full guide of places to recommend to them. And so they could feel like they can even skip Vancouver entirely and spend their time here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben Hagerty, for your comments. The next speaker I have on a non-agenda item is Bev Parslow, joining us here in person. Welcome, Bev.
Thank you very much.
You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Members of council and Mr. Mayor, I'm pleased to present tonight a resident petition from the people living on Delbrook Road. Over 3 weekends, the Delbrook Community Association canvassed residents to seek information on traffic calming on their road. Of the 65 properties we were able to contact, of the 65 properties on the road, we were able to contact 60% of them. All homes were visited a minimum of twice. We had a response rate from the 60% of 95% of those people wanting traffic calming on their road. It was an overwhelming 95%. 2 residents only were happy with the present situation. Residents on the west side complained of speeders coming down the road, and I've sent you a few pictures of the speeds that are attained. 78, 79, 80 kilometers an hour is quite common now on our road. Residents on the east side complained of speeders coming up the hill and causing a dangerous situation for people trying to leave their driveways. I am presenting the petition to show that 95% of the people we contacted were unhappy with traffic speeds on Delbrook. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Can
you.
I leave it there, sir?
Yeah, we normally would have it in the tray. I think we've got
Okay.
something in there. If you just leave it right
Yeah,
there,
I'll leave it
we'll
there.
make sure that's circulated to the council. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for
very
the
much.
presentation. Okay, checking back in with members of the public. I see a virtual hand raised there. I believe that's probably Hazen Colbert. Can we move Hazen over to the main meeting? And again, any other members of the public wishing to address, we still have some time. And so I'm going to have one person in ahead of you first, John. And okay. Hazen Colbert, can you hear me? I think he's just joined over here. There we go. Hazen Colbert, can you hear me? You must be muted.
Can you hear
Oh,
me?
there we go. Yes, I can now hear you, Hayden Colbert. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address
Mayor
council.
Little, before my time officially starts, I again mentioned something about process. When you ask that a panelist be promoted, when you ask that a person be promoted, Mr. Gordon, turn off the time. When you ask that a person be promoted, there is a delay of approximately 10 to 15 seconds. And unfortunately, for some people, that delay is enough for them to think they've been dropped from the meeting. So perhaps we could try to deal with that in some form. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, and I think what we've recognized that, and for our workshops, we've moved everybody up as panelists at an earlier stage in the meeting. For our regular meetings of council, when we get to the public input period, we promote the people that we are aware of. In this case, you were a virtual attendee, not signed up ahead of time. So, all I can do is extend that we're not going to rush you.
Thank you.
We'll take the time, and if we're not able to make the connection, I may go to another speaker first and then come back to you, but we will exhaust the list before we move on.
Mayor Little, through you, I'd like to explain to council why a number of the pieces of information that have been submitted in the resolution with respect to greening the council and the District of North Vancouver and Municipal Hall by eliminating meat is actually, a lot of the information is not only false, not only misrepresentation, but it's outright lies. And I'm going to quote here from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency data shows that livestock production in the United States, that's livestock production, accounts for 4.2% of greenhouse gases, while agriculture in total represents 7% of America's greenhouse gases. That's all livestock, not just, red meat. I would also want to show to you that approximately of that 4.2% of greenhouse gases, okay, livestock, all agriculture, beef contributes 1.4% of the 4.2. That works out to 0.2% per day, meaning that if all Americans stopped eating beef tomorrow and didn't eat it for 4 days a week, that is substantial. Greenhouse gases would be cut by 0.8%, a completely negligible and immaterial amount of reduction. What is also significant is this. Compared to the greenhouse gases that beef production causes, is that grazing land, not just for beef, but for all forms of animals, produces something called nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide is a greenhouse gas that is actually more damaging than carbon dioxide. By consuming grasses and other forms of feed, grazing cattle actually reduce the amount of nitrous oxide. So the reality is that beef and meats actually contribute a positive way generally to the environment, never mind that they're critical to our economic life in Canada and around the world. I also wanted to mention one other, what I think is an extraordinarily important fact. It takes 441 gallons to produce one beef, 441 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of boneless beef. That's a huge amount of water, 441 gallons. And I agree that we need to preserve our fresh potable water, so we need to be aware of that. I'm also going to refer to a store on Gallant Avenue that sells t-shirts, cotton t-shirts. Some of you know the store very well. It's called Ahoy, and it's owned by one Megan Curran. I just want to tell you that to produce the cotton t-shirts that are sold at that store, it requires 713 gallons of water.
Point of order.
713 gallons of water compared to the 441 gallons. So I would propose by resolution that the District of North Vancouver encourage our retailers to stop selling cotton t-shirts.
Thank you, Mr. Hazen, for your comments. Mr. Colbert, for your comments. All right, Councillor Curran, you have a concern about what was presented?
I don't own Ahoy. I started Ahoy and sold the business many years ago, so that was just false information.
But I think Mr. Colbert's point was that there's lots of other materials that have very heavy input, and that should also be considered. I take your point, though, that you don't own that facility anymore. Okay, the next speaker I have is John Lesso. Welcome, joining us here in person. So if you come up and have a seat there, welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you also for meeting with me earlier this week with respect to some other matters and informing me that you have open meetings where I can come and participate in person. I wasn't aware of that. And I mention that because at this time, right now, the city of Bellingham is meeting, very similar in terms of the composition, the issues being discussed. And they, I believe, will be considering having open meetings as well. But the fact that you have taken the initiative last year to do this speaks very well for the management of the District of North Vancouver. And by the way, I live in North Vancouver. I'd also like to mention that the concerns that have been expressed by the people in public session are very, very similar to those concerns that are mentioned in the comments to both the Bellingham City Council, the City of Bellingham, and the Whatcom County Council. Almost exactly the same. And they could learn a lot, and we could learn a lot from listening to each other and communicating with each other, particularly on the issue of whether or not to meet in person or not. So I want to thank you for that. And again, I look forward to seeing you at other meetings in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for taking advantage of meeting in person. We do appreciate it. Both people who participate online or in person, we want to make sure everybody feels welcome, but thank you for pointing that out. Okay, I see no further speakers or people interested in speaking. And so I'm going to, I see another hand, although it is a speaker that's already spoken. So you can only speak one time in public input. So at that point, I'm going to move on to the regular business of the meeting. And I would note that we do actually have an additional speaker signed up to speak at one of the items. So at item 810, there is a speaker signed up to speak for that one. And so we will have one more speaker for public input as the evening goes on. At this point, we're going to move on to the regular business of the evening, starting with item 8.1, utilizing district-owned land for rental, social, and affordable housing and public engagement plan. And I believe, so what happened was at our last regular meeting of council, we finished off the night by just opening up this item for discussion. We had just gotten through Josh Cairns' presentation on the matter, and we ran out of time in the regular meeting at the tail end of the night. And so we've asked Josh to come back today, and we're going to continue the matter at the front end of this meeting. And I just want to check in, Ms. Atta, do you have any opening comments on the matter?
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. I'm going to turn it right over to Josh to start his presentation again. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Josh. Sorry to have cut you off last time. Unfortunately, we're probably going to need to start from the top, even though we did get a couple of minutes in last time, but welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Happy to give a little bit of a refresher. So you'll recall that on December 13th, Council had directed staff to engage the public on development scenarios that could support the creation of new rental and affordable housing on 2 district-owned sites. That's 900 St. Denis Avenue and the southeast corner of Mountain Highway and Hunter Street. Having district-owned lands identified and available for affordable housing will improve our ability to respond to funding and partnership opportunities as they arise, and ultimately increase the likelihood of a project proceeding. One of Council's priority directions is to increase housing diversity and address affordability, and that includes assessing available district land and its suitability for these different types of housing. So these 2 sites were identified as priorities for advancing to engagement this spring. Engagement is being proposed for April, and we'll be using a variety of engagement tools to support broad and diverse input. This will include a series of virtual open houses and use of the district's online engagement platform, and it will also include in-person pop-up open houses and a public meeting if public health guidance and timing permits. The community engagement will help us understand the community's viewpoints on using these sites for affordable housing. We'll be able to gather input on potential building types and learn about the community's priorities for housing more broadly in the district. Results from the public engagement will be used to inform the refinement of the scenarios and vision for the future of these sites, and staff will report back to council after the consultation is completed this spring. Staff look forward to your input and are here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'll be moving the recommendation. Their seconder, Councillor Bond, thank you. Yeah, so this was, the District North Vancouver has several sites that have potential for redevelopment for social and affordable housing going forward. We felt it was necessary to separate out these two as having potential in a shorter time than some of the others, and wanted to have the discussion quickly with the community about this so that we could potentially come up with some scenarios where we could fulfill our commitment, really, which was to, whenever District of North Vancouver land is involved, to seek deep dive affordable housing for the benefit of the community. And so these are two sites that the district owns that we that have servicing nearby. The cost of service would not be significant. And they also, because of their proximity to town centers, have the potential to be a significant good to the community in terms of affordable housing. And so I'm happy to be supportive of this at this stage. I look forward to seeing scenarios as they develop and look forward to hearing the public's comment on the matter. Councillor Bond.
Thanks, Mayor Little. I'm also very pleased to be at this point. I know it's been a long time coming for council to have considered this process and gotten to the point where we've looked at all the different lands that are available in the district. We've narrowed them down, and we now have two sites that we're going to be doing this process. And I think one of the reasons also, as you mentioned, Mayor Little, behind this process is we want to be proactive, and we want to have a proactive conversation with the community about the housing needs. And so one of the things I remember when we've been doing, when the district has been doing previous engagements around housing, when we were doing the work with our housing task force, we used a lot of different storytelling techniques, different personas of people that may be able to live in these homes should the district pursue that. And I think that work is very important because often, my personal experience being on council, conversation around housing can be very reductive. Often it's how big is the building, how many parking stalls are there, how much traffic is there going to be, but there's very little conversation about who will live there. And so I think through this work, we can actually have some of that conversation and tie it to those other decisions. So if you have, say, 20 homes of a certain form, who might be able to live there? Or if you have 80 homes of a certain form and certain price points, what does that mean? And what does the actual community, the people that live and can live in these homes look like? And so I think that's an important conversation, an important part of our public consultation is to create the public awareness around that. But I also think it's important to tie a lot of the decisions that we might make around form, quote unquote character, the size of the housing, the mix of the different types of homes, whether they're 1 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms, in with that conversation and with the trade-offs that council will have to make around costs. I think in a lot of the housing discourse, people don't realize, or a lot of people don't understand, that it actually costs, without land right now, $600,000 in construction and labor and design fees to build a 2-bedroom apartment, a modest sized 2-bedroom apartment. And so I think tying all these things together it's a difficult story to tell, but I think my experience is that as you understand more and more about the housing system, you can make a more informed decision. And so I think that's important work, and I hope we do that work as part of this process. I was excited to see in the initial report that came back on the 7 sites, some different layouts talking about typology, but I think we need to really tie in the human component as well, because we're not just building homes. We're building homes for a reason, and that's so that people can live in them. And so we should be focusing on those people as well.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. I thought that was an effective tool as well. Councillor Hanson.
For all their good efforts in bringing the matter to this stage. Thank you, Mayor Little and Councillor Bond, for your comments. I'm eager to see both of these projects proceed in a timely fashion for all of the reasons stated in terms of community benefit that can be had by bringing this housing to our community, and because of the suitability, in my view, of these sites for the type of housing which is envisioned. At the same time, I understand and agree that public input is important and that the scenarios may need to be refined based on public feedback and the will of the community. So I'm very eager to proceed swiftly and efficiently to obtain the will of our community with respect to this phase of the project and get the matter underway. Some comments with respect to the engagement process itself. First, I hope that engagement can proceed as planned in April 2022 so that the matter moves along, and such that by the second quarter of 2022, we can be looking at more tangible steps to move the matter forward. With respect to the engagement as well, I hope that at least some of the engagement includes an in-person component. I believe at this stage that can be done safely. There's recently been a liberalization of public health orders, and I think it would be doing our community a disservice at this stage, at least under prevailing circumstances, to not have an in-person component to the public engagement. So I look forward to, again, I thank staff for bringing it to this point, and I look forward to staff reporting back, and I hope that is within the second quarter as to the public engagement findings and the next steps so that we can move ahead with this important project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Next speaker I have is Councillor Curran.
Thank you to Councillor Bond for bringing this forward. Seems like a very, very long time ago, but it's nice to see it moving along. So thanks, staff, for your work. This is a lot of space, and I think it's really exciting time to be able to look. I looked, and it's nearly, I think if we put them together, it's almost 5 acres. And so between the two pieces, it's a space that I'm very excited to hear some of the ideas that our community has around how we can multi-solve with these spaces, and looking at what would they like to be in spaces to kind of creating the future. I mean, that's literally what we're doing. So I think it's really exciting to see and make sure that we engage folks as much as we possibly can in person. As Councillor Hanson pointed out, I think if that's safe to do so, people would like that opportunity, perhaps outside in places, but also, you know, having options for people to engage virtually as well. So I look forward to seeing this move forward in a timely fashion, and to hearing what ideas people have for, you know, people do share ideas with us quite a lot. So it's great to have a format for these two significant pieces of district land. And as Councillor Bond pointed out, rezoning or getting to that point where there's more certainty, I think will speed up the process, which we can all say generally we hear over and over again how long things take and that it's too long in a housing crisis. So as much as we can do to speed things up, I think is important. I've certainly learned a lot about this and the challenges that we face in doing it. But thanks again for bringing it forward, and we'll hopefully see it move along fairly quickly. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Kern. Councillor Murray.
Thank you. So I'm just, I'm really interested in having a public meeting as well. I'm thinking these two areas are very close to the Holiday Inn, and what is the challenge in scheduling something early on in the process to gather the local community's thoughts on this initiative?
I'm of a similar mind. Can we
Can I
have a
have my
response?
time stopped, please?
Yeah, Ms. Adler or Mr. Cairns, you have a comment about availability of public in person for consultation on this?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and Councillor Murray. So through Your Worship, these are definitely different avenues we're looking at, and we're looking at a potential sort of suite of locations where we could go out to the public to sort of meet them where they're at, both in terms of in-person pop-ups, which we know we can confidently execute today, basically with the current guidelines in place and where we're at in the pandemic. And on the second half of that, we're also looking at in-person events that would be in a more structured format, and that includes looking at various venues that would be in proximity to some of these sites. So whether that's the Holiday Inn or looking at community facilities as well, basically just trying to make sure we cover our sort of bases and get out in different ways to different people.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I think council has been really interested in having face-to-face meetings in the community. We haven't done that for a while, and I think the the public health orders allow it. And so I would hope that we can accommodate that earlier. I mean, April's next week, a week and a half. So it would be nice if we could make that happen. So I guess I'm a bit curious as to what we're going to be discussing with them. I hear this comment that we need to, this has taken a long time, but let's, hope that we can expedite this. And I think the district in the last 4 years has been very, very accommodating in regards to looking at, social housing in the municipality and looking at our lands. The challenge is the partners and the partners timeline. And certainly, there's many municipalities throughout the province that are engaging with the province and BC Housing and different partners to accommodate social housing. And there's a bit of a backlog. So, I think we have to be recognizing that. I'm interested in understanding what partnerships we're considering, and certainly one that I've been talking about for many years that we still have not been able to realize is Habitat for Humanity's an opportunity with them, because they do offer a different kind of housing. They offer a truly sustainable rent to own concept that is regenerated after the initial residents leave. So it truly is a sustainable model, and they offer sweat equity into the properties, which changes the pricing and the cost. And I hope that we're going to put out some scenarios of different types of partners and different types of housing to accommodate the gaps that we haven't been successful in achieving. Certainly we've lost a number of 4-bedroom units in the municipality over the decade. And those larger units that can accommodate a family, and with more people working at home, larger units are something that's very important. So I hope that this is, we have to engage the partners in order to understand what they're willing to bring to the table before we go out to the to the community and start asking them what kind of form and character they're interested in. So can I have a comment on that?
Mr. Cairns?
For Your Worship. Yeah, that's a really good comment. And what we're trying to do is basically get at some of those questions that I think you just raised. So there is part of this conversation focused around the forms. Part of the conversation is also really understanding community needs and preferences too, as they relate to these housing. So what types of housing are you looking to have here? Do you feel there needs to be a priority or emphasis placed on maybe delivering more larger units or units with more bedrooms? And from that, we hope to be able to bring back to council with the findings of this, along with the next steps, which could include some of the potential partners that could really meet what it is we're looking here.
Okay, so that's, I'm glad to hear that. And I think that we should actually have included in that public meeting, that face-to-face public meeting, information in regards to what kind of housing we've already got and where some of those gaps exist, so we can concentrate on that. And then we need to be realistic about how all of this unfolds. Certainly the Inter-River community, their biggest challenge, and especially with that site, is the circulation of the area. And we have yet to complete our artificial turf down there and the improvements to the access into the northern part of that community. So we need to really, listen to their concerns and understand the implications. And then with the building on Mountain Highway, how all that works. We need to understand the implications of all of that too. And I think that needs to be brought to those meetings.
Great. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Murray. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks everyone for your comments so far. And I do just want to acknowledge Councillor Bond as well for his work in helping us get to this point tonight. And thank you, staff, for your work as well. I am excited about the potential of what could happen with these two particular sites. And I do support the recommendation here that we move to a public engagement phase. And like my colleague, Councillor Hanson, I hope that we can make this happen in April as well, because I think we'd all like to see some progress in this particular area. And I think the opportunities that could potentially happen in terms of housing on these sites are really exciting. So not too much to add. I think this is just an important next step that needs to happen. And it will be interesting to hear the community's views on this as we then are able to go out and speak to the different partners as staff have highlighted. So yeah, very supportive to see this moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Back. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would also like to thank all of council, because all of council has been behind this. It's been an agreement and a concern with all of us that rental, social, and affordable housing are our priorities. We listed that as our priorities at the beginning of the term. There are a couple of things that I guess some of what I was going to say has already been said. And one of my concerns is the public engagement. I don't want to lose the people that aren't connected to the district by social media or by websites or computers. And I think sometimes, we may start to feel that we're reaching everybody that way, but we're still not. And so I really am in favor of in-person as well. And I also think that I'm going to show up if we have these in-persons, I'm going to show up. I think it would be beneficial for council members to attend these meetings as well, or at least one or two of them. So I really want to push that we do more than just electronic outreach. And also, when you're listing the demographics or the type of people that you're going to try and reach out to, I also want to say that there's a lot of single family older homes with people who are empty nesters that would like to move out of the single family home into an affordable, because they're either on a fixed income by now, they're retired, whatever. And maybe they haven't made $1 million on their property, but I think we should reach out to that demographic as well, because that might it might give them a way to step down from a larger home and free up possible single family home for a larger family. So kind of make it the opportunity for them to hear about this as well. I'd also like to say, thank Councillor Murray for mentioning, which I've mentioned before as well, that when you're in this kind of development, you have to have partners. And sometimes not all partners have all their ducks in a row at the same time. And so that has to be considered. Not all of the delay in housing is because of permits or the district, or we may get our ducks in a row, but then we have two partners that we have to coincide with. And along that line, I'd also like to mention that both of these properties are our fire department properties at the moment, are using those properties. And until the fire hall on Old Dollarton gets completed, neither of these properties are going to be vacant in order to build on. So I just want to be realistic about the timeline, that we need to consider that They are currently occupied and being used at the moment. So we are dependent on the new fire hall completing. And that's part of the timeline equation. And I guess the other thing I wanted to just mention was, I guess in regards to how you reach out to people, I would hope that we use such things as the media, letters, libraries, rec centers. I'm sure that's what staff has planned. And I also want to emphasize that maybe, you know, we could keep reaching out to the federal and provincial government, because originally housing fell in their bailiwick, and it seems to be that more and more things are being passed down to the municipalities. So maybe we could do a letter to the governments. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bond.
Thanks, Mayor Little. I'm sure staff have already thought about this, but you know, maybe hear a little bit more about how some of the in-person sessions how staff is going to address those sessions to be a little bit more inclusive. And I know there's people with you know, mobility challenges. I know, speaking from personal experience, having a child-friendly environment is important. But there's lots of different barriers that can be in place in some of the traditional formats, meeting formats that prevent people from participating fully. And so I know we've talked about this quite a bit. I know we've got, you know, Councillor Curran has brought different motions that are now kind of set in policy around this as well. And so if staff have any introductory comments, that would be great to hear. But also if that can be taken into consideration. Even I know we probably haven't discussed this in the past, but you know, people with lower incomes, you know, I've heard of situations where people are given an honorarium to attend because it's might cut into their actual personal income because they don't have the time, or they're working during different engagement opportunities. So anything that staff can provide on that, and then take into consideration, especially because we are trying to reach a demographic of people that cannot currently afford housing in the community, which I think is important to recognize.
Through your worship.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Cairns.
Yeah, thank you. Through your worship. Yeah, that's a really great point, and there's sort of the two prongs we're taking to do that. And on the one hand, it's the outreach and engagement component, really getting the word out and letting people know of these opportunities that are available to them. And for that, we're looking at a diversity of tools, a mix of doing things that people will actually see or come across in their day-to-day lives, and then of course also doing the online engagement as well for those that might rely on those sources. When it comes to reaching out to groups we maybe don't hear from often, we are looking at tools available there as well, and really building off some of the successes from the OCP action plan, where we found a bit of a way to tap into some of those groups through certain avenues that we haven't been able to take advantage of in the past. And we'll be replicating that here. So that's looking to equity denied groups. It's looking to the student body or youth who might be looking to enter into these homes in the future or aren't able to. And then finding a way to translate that to actually getting them to show up and participate and feel comfortable and being able to share their voice. And that's where this sort of multi-pronged approach comes in, to doing a blend of online, in-person engagement, a mix of more formal opportunities like a public meeting, with the less formal, where we're going to just be popping up in the community where they might naturally be already, so we can reduce some of those barriers for them.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thank you. And I think the pandemic's shown us through Zoom and online engagement that we can, you know, add certainly that other tier of communication into, you know, more readily accommodate people that are challenged with work commitments and childcare and that kind of thing. But I did want to just put my 2 cents in regards to when these events happen. And I know that just the early input on the Safeway project up in Lynn Valley as an example, the early input commenting period took place over 1 week of spring break. at a time when so many people want to go away because they haven't been away in 3 years. And we've allowed that early input to take place during that time. And I hope staff actually, I was going to bring this up later, but I hope staff can actually extend that, that time, because I don't think it's fair that we, are doing it during a holiday, and it's such an important time right now for people to spend with their families away. So I know that the Easter long weekend is in April, and it's mid-April, and so I want to be really cognizant of that. People are taking extra days on either side. So I'd rather get this right and do it well and have as much input as possible than try to keep it tight in a time frame to check a box. And so, timing of these things is really, really important and respectful, in regards to the time that we ask the community to spend to look at these kinds of projects. And maybe Mr. Stewart can maybe update council in regards to the Safeway public input over the spring break at the end of the meeting, or another time, to see if we can address that as well. Thank you.
Councillor Murray, Mr. Milburn, you have a response?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of points. Wanted to comment on Councillor Bond's point as well, to ensure that, as we go back to accommodating in-person type meetings, it's really important to remind ourselves of those physical space limitations that have been a challenge for some of our community members in the past. And so we'll want to look carefully at the locations where we place these kind of in-person events that are accessible, child-friendly, and also, make people feel safe and welcome, given that we're still in this transition period with the pandemic. So we're very, very cognizant of those issues, and we will be making sure that that's addressed in our work. In terms of the timing of the event, the timing of the consultation was specifically picked in April to be open, not too soon after the Christmas holidays, and in a period of time that we hoped we could get maximum amount of input. And then in terms of not this discussion, but in terms of the preliminary application that was being considered in Lynn Valley, we'll come back to council with some advice around how we can ensure that we get additional input. I noticed we are still receiving input today, and we definitely want to create opportunities so that everyone with an interest in the matter has a chance to comment. So we'll provide some feedback to council on how we can expand those opportunities for that particular preliminary application. But that's a different matter from this item being discussed right now. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of groups to add that we may want to reach out to. One may have already been on the list, and that's the North Van Chamber. I know that they were provided lots of input during the OCP review, but when, as the district rep on the Chamber of Commerce board, they regularly state that attracting and retaining employees to the North Shore is the #1 challenge due to the high housing costs. So I think they would want to play a role in this, and would help to get some of their members engaged in an engagement exercise like this. The other group that is just top of mind, because a few of us were involved in the presentation to them last week, is the North Shore Young Civic Forum. And this is a group of about 30 or so under 40-year-olds who are very engaged and want to be more engaged in local government, local issues. They all reside on the North Shore. So I think that would be a great group to potentially encourage to be involved in this as well.
I think they were under 39-year-olds, Councillor Back, not under 40-year-olds.
Pardon me, under 39. Yes, this is my last year to qualify.
Councillor Back had a birthday. I did just want to say that it's still the intent. This is a district-owned property, and this council has made a commitment that when district property is involved, that we're going to be the proponent. We're going to lead this process through. And so what that looks like is the municipality being the advocate for it, suffering the slings and arrows and criticisms on issues of form and massing and access and egress and suitability within a neighborhood. And that's still my intent anyway, is to proceed through with the rezoning and setting the envelope for the building. Then there's going to be a next stage, and the next stage is fitting in the different services that could potentially go into this. And the problem with reversing that order is that you're going to be telling a lot of people, look, this is potentially going to be worker housing, or maybe it'll be level 2 men's recovery housing, or maybe it'll be some other kind of important service in the community. And in the end, it's not. And we'd be better off to focus on the envelope, focus on the building, and then have, once that is done and off the table, then have the separate discussion about who the partner on the space may be and what kind of mix of housing we could get through a partnership on the space. So that's still my intent. I think that's been the focus of the council, is when district land is involved, for us to be the proponent on the redevelopment rather than bringing partners to the table. That doesn't mean we don't involve and include equity-seeking partners in the community. It just means that the focus for the first stage is talking about the envelope and the impact on the neighborhood. And then there's going to be a second stage, which is focusing on specifically on what kinds of services would be appropriate in the space. That's all my comments. I'm going to be supportive of the motion. Council, I see no further hands, so I'm going to call the question on the matter. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council, and thank you very much, Mr. Cairns, for presenting your staff report 2 times to help us better understand it. We do appreciate it, and sorry that this matter ended up being hung up at the tail end of a meeting last week or 2 weeks ago. The next item we have up for discussion, Council, is item 8.2. This is amendments to the Drinking Water Conservation Bylaw. This matter is up for adoption, and so I'm going to call the question on the matter. Sorry, still need to move her in a second. Is somebody going to be moving? Okay, I have Councillor Curran moving this is the recommendation. Councillor Hanson, I'll count you as a seconder on the matter. There's no other discussion on adoption. Call the question on the matter. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the matter passes with Councillor Forbes and Mayor Little opposed. Okay, the next item is 8.3. This is amendments to the Street and Traffic Bylaw. And again, this matter is up for adoption. Will somebody be moving the staff recommendation? Moved by Councillor Back. Is there a seconder on the matter? I think I saw Councillor Hanson's hand here as well. Okay, and again, I'm going to call the question on the matter. All those in favor? Contrary minded? The matter passes with Mayor Little and Councillor Forbes opposed. The next item up for discussion is item 8.4. This is the proposed amendment to enable the e-scooter pilot. This matter is also up for consideration of adoption. Would somebody be please moving a motion? Councillor Forbes, you have a motion?
I wanted to make a motion to rescind the 3rd reading and return the matter back to staff. And there's a couple of reasons why.
There's no debate on this matter. Hang on, let me just check with the clerk. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so unfortunately, there's no debate on the matter, but your motion is valid. Is there a seconder for that motion? Okay, I don't see a seconder for the motion, so the motion dies on the floor. Does somebody else have an alternate motion? Moved by Councillor Hanson, you're moving the staff recommendation? Thank you. Is there a seconder for the matter? Councillor Curran. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries with Councillor Forbes opposed. Okay, the next item is item 8.5. This is the development permit 83.18, 220 Mountain Highway and 1515 to 5055 Oxford Street. And this matter is this is on issuance of a development permit. Will somebody be moving a recommendation, or do we have I see Mr. Hartford. Do you have a comment from staff first?
Your Worship, we have a brief introductory presentation from Robin Hay, the development planner on the project.
Thank you. Welcome, Robin Hay. Do you have any comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a brief presentation here. Just share my screen. Just want to make sure you can see my presentation there.
Yes, I can.
Great. Good evening, members of council and members of the public. This presentation will provide a brief overview of the proposal at 220 Mountain Highway and 1515 to 1555 Oxford Street, located at the south end of the Lynn Creek Town Center. The proposal is for a 6-story rental building with 134 market rental units and 6 non-market rental units. Implementation of the project requires a council-issued development permit. In terms of site details, the site is shown in red and is approximately 30,000 square feet in area, or just about 3/4 of an acre. The OCP designates the site as commercial residential mixed use level 3, which envisions densities of up to 3.5 FSR. The zoning for the site is CD 130, which permits rental development in a building up to 6 stories in height and an overall density of up to 3.0 FSR. Lastly, the site is located within the 3 following development permit areas: form and character for multifamily housing, energy and water conservation and greenhouse gas emission reduction, and protection of development from creek hazard. The Phibbs Exchange bus loop is located at the east end of Oxford Street, shown in yellow. The Phibbs Exchange upgrade project is anticipated to start construction in the summer of 2022, with an anticipated 18-month construction period. Creekstone Care Center on the north side of Oxford Street, shown in purple, was recently completed and is now occupied. For reference, the Green Spine Linear Park is shown in green. The Pivot rental development, also on the north side of the street, shown in pink, is nearing completion with occupancy anticipated in early fall 2022. The excavation permit for the Shalal Apartments social housing project, shown in orange, was recently issued with occupancy anticipated in early spring 2023. The Lynn Creek apartment building is located directly to the east, shown in blue. There are commercial properties to the south, which are designated in the OCP for future mixed-use development. It is anticipated that construction associated with the nearby projects will be complete prior to the issuance of a building permit for the subject site. Therefore, there will unlikely be any construction overlap. The proposal is for a 6-story rental development with a density of 2.96 FSR, consisting of 134 market rental units and 6 non-market rental units. The proposed land use density and building height are consistent with both the site's OCP designation and CD 130 zoning. Turning to the site layout, the main pedestrian entrance to the building is from Oxford Street. The proposal includes 2 indoor amenity areas on the ground floor, shown in blue, in addition to a rooftop amenity area. A 7.5 meter wide dedication has been provided on the east side of the site for a new lane connecting Oxford Street to the existing rear lane. Proposed parking for the project is located in a single-level underground garage accessed from the southwest corner of the site. Additional parking stalls are provided at grade and are accessed from the rear lane. The proposed landscaping is concentrated along the Mountain Highway and Oxford Street frontages and includes 2 levels of planting, one at grade and the other in planters at the patio level. The housing mix proposed includes 6 non-market rental units and 134 market rental units, ranging from studio to 3-bedroom layouts. 50% of the units are in 2 or 3 bedroom layout that would be considered suitable for families. In terms of meeting the housing objectives, the project includes 6 non-market rental units to help address housing challenges for low to moderate income households with incomes between $30,000 and $85,000 per year. Rents for the non-market units are between 9% and 17% below the Metro Vancouver median rents and 20% below the district's median rents as published in the CMHC market rental survey. The housing agreement secures all of the 140 units as rental and secures the rental rates and eligibility criteria for the below market rental units. A total of 98 vehicle parking spaces are proposed, including 82 spaces for residents, 14 for visitors, and 2 car share spaces with a ratio of 0.59 spaces per unit in accordance with the district's alternative vehicle parking rates policy and the CD 130 requirements. At least 20% of the parking stalls will have energized outlets capable of supporting level 1 charging, and conduits will be in place for level 1 charging for all remaining parking stalls. A total of 206 bicycle spaces are proposed, including 194 spaces for residents and 12 for visitors, in accordance with the CD 130 requirements. As mentioned previously, the site is within 3 development permit areas. In response to the energy and water conservation and greenhouse gas emission reduction guidelines, the proposal will be built to step 3 of the BC Energy Step Code with a low carbon energy system and fossil fuel free mechanical system throughout the building. In response to the creek hazard guidelines, all habitable space will be located above the flood construction level. In terms of the form and character guidelines, the Oxford Street building face is broken up with a recessed element in the middle, which provides for the main pedestrian entrance. And the use of different facade treatments on either side of the entrance help to reinforce the break in the building length. The proposed building is sited so that it provides a presence to both street frontages, and it reflects the building heights and setbacks of nearby developments. The project provides a number of off-site improvements, including improved street frontages on Mountain Highway and Oxford Street, a new bicycle lane on the Mountain Highway frontage, creation of a new north-south lane, which will allow for the removal of the Mountain Highway access to the existing rear lane, provision of a road dedication to improve the turning radius for buses from Mountain Highway to Oxford Street, and a new traffic signal, as well as undergrounding overhead lines on both street frontages and water, storm, and sanitary sewer infrastructure upgrades. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation, and there is a representative from the applicant team here to answer questions.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, Robin Hay. At this time, I'm going to be moving the staff recommendation. Is there a seconder on the matter?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Curran. So for my own comments on this, I mean, Council had a great discussion about this when we considered the OCP amendment and rezoning for this property by this council. We did bonus the site slightly in order to be able to achieve the non-market units in the space. I do think it's going to be a development in good suitability with its neighboring properties, similar densities and such. I did have just one question for Robin Hay on the lane access. Will an opportunity be presented to A&W or the owner of the A&W property to have an exit onto that lane? Quite a few people, because you can no longer turn from Mountain Highway into the A&W because of the concrete barrier. If they had an opportunity to turn at Oxford and then come in on the lane, then they wouldn't have to do a full rotation around the block in order to be able to get into the A&W. So has that been considered, access into that space?
Your worship, perhaps I can speak to that on behalf of Robin Hay. The district would certainly be open to some adjustments in traffic circulation for the A&W site. This would be a public lane, and they would have a right to request a driveway access to it.
Okay. Well, I hope it's at least a conversation we can have with them, because right now a lot of people are circling the block. Okay, me, I'm the only one. I'm circling the block to get into the A&W, but it is a waste. You go down the lane rather than going and blocking up the whole route around. It makes more sense. Anyway, thank you. Okay, second on the matter was, I'm just trying to recall, was it Councillor Hanson? Oh, Councillor Curran. Sorry, Councillor Curran, go ahead. Your comments.
Thanks, Mayor Little, and we all know that it's you going to the A&W. So perhaps Mr. Hartford will get back to you on that. No, not a whole lot to add. Pleased to see this moving forward, supported it at the rezoning phase, and it looks like a good project. More rentals in an area that is accessible on transit. And although this one doesn't have as many non-market as we'd like, it also contributed in other ways to the green spine. And I think that this particular space required more public space around the building than some other places. So always a learning on that, but pleased to see, just pleased to see this moving forward, and I don't have much else to add.
Thank you, Councillor Kern. Councillor Bond.
Yeah, I was also going to call you out on the A&W, Mayor Little, but I'm guilty of the same thing. I do it on my bike, and so I will also have a personal benefit of the bike lane to get to A&W, which does not influence my decision at all about the development permit. But I remember too, I'm not sure if staff or the applicant can speak about this, but I know the amenity space was a key component, and the amount of amenity and creating a community in this building was a key component, and how the design of the building contributed to that. I'm wondering if either staff or the applicant can speak to any changes that have been made since rezoning, specifically on design elements that make more opportunities for community building in this project.
Through your worship to Councillor Bond, I can comment that there have not been significant changes to the building since the public hearing stage. The applicant may have some specific comments about the amenity package proposed in the building as it was referenced in the applicant's presentation at the public hearing.
Right. If there's no changes, I think that's fine. I think we all remember that, but I think the one important point here, especially on the non-market units, in this proposal, the applicant chose to do fewer homes, fewer non-market homes, but at a deeper discount. And I know in this neighborhood right now, in the Sealand neighborhood, one bedroom goes for around $2,200. Two bedroom is anywhere between $2,700 and $2,800. So even though there's only 5 one bedrooms, the people that have the opportunity to live in those homes at those rents will be paying about $1,000 less per month than what's currently available in the neighborhood. And so I think that's going to make a huge impact for those individuals or those families that are living in those homes. And I think it's just something to take into account when we're making decisions on these types of projects in the future.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bond. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is the kind of thing that we really still need in the district. I wish there was more non-market, but I do understand that you can only get so much of this in a private development, and then the development no longer makes sense to the developer. Just a question maybe for Mr. Hartford. I can't remember, but I'm a little surprised that the charging stations are only level 1 and not level 2, given that level 2 is kind of the standard now. Was there any discussion about level 1 and level 2 with the applicant?
Mr. Hartford.
Through your worship to Councillor Forbes, this application was considered under the district's original EV charging policy, which set out the level 1 objective. The policy has since been updated to highlight the need for level 2 charging stations. So staff held the applicant to the policy in place at the time.
Okay, thank you.
It'll be level 2. Okay, so can I just clarify that the applicant is here in the room, and it'd be great if you came up to the microphone. Actually, perhaps you can speak to how you're away from the minimum policy.
Yes, Your Worship, members of council. Yes, I just want to confirm the intent, and I think we've confirmed that even formally, is that we will have 100% off the parking spots underground will have conduits for level 2, and 20% of those at the start of the operation of the building will be wired for level 2. Yeah, nobody does level 1 anymore. So yeah.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. That's great to hear. Thank you.
So our minimum policy would have required them to have the transformer capacity, but they've exceeded that policy by actually running the level 2 capacity to the units and having 20% of them all completely wired up for it. Thank you very much for clarifying that, Councillor Forbes, as well.
Thank you. And just one other thing I would just like to say, I'm really happy to get this building and 140 units, rental units in, because we need them, but I still am very concerned about the parking down in that area, but I guess we're going to see how it works out. But yeah, I just wanted that charging station thing clarified to me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Forbes. I see no other speakers on council. So I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, council. Next item up for consideration this evening is the 2022 to 2026 financial plan bylaw. This item is up for consideration for first, second, and third reading following both our public workshop on the matter and our separate council workshop on the matter. And there was, I guess, a public hearing on that matter. And so just checking in with Mr. Wardell, do you have any opening comments on the matter?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship, the 2022 to 2026 bylaw is, as you mentioned before council tonight, for first, second, and third readings. Adoption is scheduled for April 4th and must take place before council debates tax distribution and sets tax rates as required by the community charter. So financial plan adoption, the tax distribution workshop, and the related bylaws are timed to available council meetings, staff workloads associated with producing with the tax notices, and our statutory deadlines. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wardell. I'll be moving a staff recommendation. Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councillor Hanson. Okay, just my comments. I think that we've had a very long discussion about this starting back in the fall and working towards progressively a more detailed, refined financial plan. I think that it does accurately reflect the priorities of this council. I do also think that it presents a very fiscally cautious picture of things to come for our community, and I'm happy to support this financial plan going forward, recognizing that there will be some challenges that come during the term of this plan. This plan is unlikely to be unaltered as it goes forward because we're already seeing cost escalators in construction and significant inflationary pressures on particularly what would be a municipal basket of goods. The types of services that we buy are being heavily affected by the recent inflationary pressures. And so I'm supportive of this, but I'm also cognizant that it's likely going to require amendment as we go through its term in order to be able to address some of the inflationary pressures that our community is facing. Second on the matter is Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to start by thanking staff and for all of their work in reaching this stage with respect to the preparation of the 2022 to 2026 financial plan. I'd also like to very specifically thank all of the parties involved in providing public input with respect to the plan. I believe, as being stated by the mayor, the district is managing its finances well. It's charting a difficult course between holding the line on taxation, managing debt and reserves, and maintaining service levels and capital investments. I believe that the district strategy in holding tax increases to 2% for operating and 1% for capital investment is prudent, and that the budget does align with council priorities. A few comments. I think that the district could do a better job. We can always do a better job with respect to the transparency of the process and public input. And I say that in relation to something as complicated as a budget. It is somewhat confusing. The different set-offs, the different choices that are being made are by definition perhaps challenging for the public to grasp. And we could always do a better job in setting that out in a way that the public can understand. Also, I mean, what we're forced to do with respect to a local government budget is balance off against potential rates of taxation. We need to consider reserves. We need to consider the state of infrastructure and the cost of municipal services. And all of that is a juggling act. And I think we could always improve in the way we set that out for the public to understand. With respect to public input specifically, it has been a challenge, I think, really soliciting the views of the public in a COVID-type environment. As I say, a budget involves weighing these competing priorities and this balancing of needs and resources. And I would hope that we really turn our mind to this, how we can get this across to the public in a very transparent way and receive their viewpoint on these balancing processes as clearly as possible. So a few other thoughts. I'm gratified that the budget plan allocates $74.4 million towards social and affordable housing. That's halfway towards the referenda goal of $150 million for 1,000 units by 2029. So we're effectively on track with respect to the referenda pledge for social housing. I'm aware of a long-term funding gap of $200 million over 10 years. The 2022 budget, in fact, is a deficit budget. It draws off reserves and increases debt. And there's a 5-year plan that assumes that inflationary pressures will subside. This is what the mayor was referencing. There's some positive assumptions perhaps that won't come to pass, and if not, some very difficult decisions potentially will be made, which of course raises the need for public understanding, transparency, and public input. Just a few final comments. I'll keep it to my 4-minute time. I'm glad to see the 10% one-time increase to community services grants. Indeed, I'd have like to see a greater increase to community service grants. I support the investment in public electric charging being moved ahead to 2022. Perhaps I'll just take another 30 seconds. From 2024. I also very specifically support the ongoing lobbying for municipal finance reforms, especially around assuring that growth pays for growth and ensuring fairness regionally across taxation. So again, just to conclude, thank everyone who is involved in the painstaking work of preparing this. I'm proud of the work that we have accomplished as a district with respect to local government finances in our local government. And I look forward to finalizing the 2022 budget and the 2022 to 2026 financial plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hanson. I don't see any other speakers at this time. Okay, Councillor Murray, your comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little. And I want to thank staff as well. Certainly, we're in challenging times, and the state of society and the planet is at a time like no other. And we have to make sure that we remain responsible in regards to our spending and make sure that the tax dollars that we're collecting on behalf of the residents are spent wisely and responsibly. Some of the concerns that I have going forward is the cost of growth in our community. Certainly the depreciating assets I've spoken about for a number of years in regards to the amenity contributions made by the development community. We're now on the hook to replace those as we age. There's certainly the cost, the incredible cost to regional infrastructure. And as the mayor said, we're going to be looking at amendments as we move forward. The utility charges will be very interesting as we get to that portion of the budget and how that's going to impact not just us, but the region as a whole. Those are numbers we've never seen before in regards to the infrastructure replacement of, many, it's important infrastructure replacement. Certainly our sewage treatment plant at the foot of Pemberton is, is a tertiary facility, which is going to improve the water quality of our inlet. And as the region moves into replacing other plants such as that, tertiary is going to be, a mandatory requirement. And certainly the district was leaders in, bringing that to the table to begin those discussions, but they're not without their costs. And certainly climate change has shown that, our areas are very susceptible to flooding and storm surges. I don't think we would have thought a few years ago that Ambleside Park would have been underwater because of weather. Flooding is a huge issue, and the mayor has been very clear in the past in regards to the susceptibility to forest fire, and that is a very, very real threat. And we have to be very cognizant of how we deal with all of that, and certainly, being prepared as best we can, and making sure that our senior levels of government that will ultimately need to come to our rescue, are the funds available? Are we going to be able to be looked after? I know the town of Lytton, I think, just got $18 million, and that was just to clean up the fire debris. That's not rebuilding. That's not doing anything but cleaning it up and removing it. And that's a very sobering thought. The impacts of Abbotsford, for instance. So all of those things we need to talk about as we move forward. I will, I support the comments of Councillor Hanson and the mayor, and I think they've succinctly presented, how I feel about the budget too. I do note, though, at our last discussion in regards to the budget, I did bring up the community service grants, and there was the number of 37,000 that we requested. That wasn't exactly what we were looking at, and yet it remains in the report today. And I believe there was a comment by the mayor at the last meeting that we were going to have staff look at that to provide something more suitable, given the impacts that our community service providers have had to incur over the last few years of COVID, and the significant increase in community outreach to those groups. So I'd like some comment on that, and I'd like us to be able to amend that in the future, and I'd like staff to provide the process in regards to that.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes, through your worship. As you mentioned, the financial plan can be amended at any time. So staff can take those comments away under consideration and come back at a later date. And we can certainly fold that into the next amendment.
I just think that, we have talked about this a few times. We've brought it up, and I don't want it to get lost. And as we're handing out the grants, I don't want it to be just stuck on this one-time amount of $37,000. I think we were all looking at something a little bit more significant than that. And I'm a bit concerned that if we don't do it now, it will get lost, and we won't be able to address the issue as I believe it needs to be addressed.
Okay, I see responses from Mr. Stewart and Mr. Milburn. If we can pause Councillor Mary's time, that's great. Thank you. Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, quite simply, Your Worship, we've committed to as staff to have a more in-depth review of the changes that need to happen to make sure that our social services are sustainable and these groups are sustainable. So we're committing to that as staff. Council doesn't need to worry about it. We realize that this is a fix at this point, but as Andy has commented on, we have the chance to amend the budget, and we'll certainly do that as we head into the fall.
And that we are able to amend the budget in order to address the grants before they're given out. So let's have that discussion sooner than later, Mr. Stewart.
You also have a response from Mr. Milburn?
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to compliment the comments made by Mr. Stewart to indicate that when the matter was raised with council requested that staff undertake some engagement with the core service providers and CSAC, and so we're committed to that, and we are doing that in a consultation so that we can turn this item to council in a timely way so that council can consider the overall budget implications and possibly make amendments if appropriate. Thank you.
And when will those discussions take place, Mr. Milburn?
Your Worship, I'd have to return that information. Ms. Atva's team is working on those details, and so we can provide that as a follow-up to council after this meeting.
If we could have that as soon as possible, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
But Mr. Milburn, can we just confirm that I think it's in September is sort of the next time we consider the grants. Is that your recollection too? We've already considered one tranche of them already, but isn't there a second round that comes up in September?
Yeah, Your Worship, I believe Ms. Atva may have the dates off the top of her head. I don't have those specific dates.
Ms. Atva?
Thank you very much, Mayor Little. The community service grants are under review at this time, and they will come to council at the beginning of July, along with childcare grants. It's the permissive tax exemptions that come to council in October, and the community services advisory committee has input to that over the summertime.
Great, thank you so much.
So Mayor Little, sorry, I've got computers. So Mayor Little, based on that, I think it really is pertinent that this discussion with the service providers happens ASAP, so we could make an amendment prior to July. So again, I'm just asking for an expedited process. They've incurred these additional costs and, done their best to stretch their dollars to be able to support our community. That is, many of them are, it's a very, very challenging time. And with this inflation going up, and all of the other stresses that the community has to deal with, especially when you're low income, housing, food, gas, everything. We need to be able to address this right now. So again, if we are going to be, as Ms. Atvis pointed out, these decisions will be made in July.
Never a dull moment with pets. Okay, I'm going to move on to Councillor Beck. Oh, sorry.
I believe Councillor Curran was ahead of me there with her hand up.
I do see that. Councillor Curran, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I didn't know Councillor Murray, and I was like, look at the kitty, and then it just all went sideways. Hopefully they're all fine. Just briefly wanted to thank staff. I feel like other councillors have pointed out that these are unprecedented times, and I feel like we have a staff that is committed to looking at things differently and creatively, and I certainly have appreciated that. And these are unprecedented times in terms of sort of intersecting crises that we're facing, and that we're at the end of the line at the local government level. And so I think some of the rethinking that's happening at other orders of government will certainly be involved with looking more closely at well-being. I know the resilience work that's happening at Nassim. I think there's so many policies that connect, I think, to help us get where we need to be, and just the carbon accounting, looking at nature differently in the way we make decisions, and really having everyone feel empowered to be part of the solution in a new way. So sometimes it's not necessarily that things have to cost more, it's that we have to do things differently. And so I think this is a time for creativity, and I am just grateful that we have staff that's willing to think of new ways of doing things. And I think we're in good shape, and there's obviously endless work to do, but I just wanted to thank staff for all their effort. I know a lot of departments have to work through this, and to Councillor Hansen's point, I agree. It's not the simplest thing to explain to people, but it's so important. And I have seen some interesting ways that people can, that residents can engage in financial planning in terms of like, you have this money, what would you spend it on, you know, and to get people engaged a bit more with that. But just wanted to thank staff. And yeah, and the other thing is that this can change at any time, even though we approve it at any time, we're able to amend it if need be.
Thank you, Councillor Kern. I've missed you 2 times tonight in the rotation. I apologize. Can you raise your hand for a sec? Your virtual hand? That's what I need a higher contrast hand for you. I'm having trouble seeing it. Okay.
But that's the white hand.
Well, other than a darker wall or something, but sorry about that. Councillor Beck, your comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. My comment will be brief, as it's very much along the same lines as what my colleagues here have said. I'm always appreciative and feel fortunate to have the finance staff that we do. I always feel like district finances are managed very well, but particularly during times that are as uncertain as the ones that we're in. And recognizing, as well as has been highlighted, that this plan is flexible, that amendments can be brought forward, because I think there's a lot that we cannot predict as a community, as a part of a larger global community right now. So I think I just again want to thank staff for the work that they've done to get us to this point with the budget. And also to say that when it comes to the community service providers, I agree with Councillor Murray's point wholeheartedly that the sooner we can meet with some of these core service providers, the better. I would absolutely support that. I know I've spoken to a number of them and some of the challenges that they faced over the last couple of years. And I think for us to sit down with them would be a really wise thing to do, and find some ways that we can help them. Perhaps it's, sharing resources as well could be one thing to look at. But yeah, very much support the idea of a meeting with them sooner rather than later. But again, just want to thank staff for the work in building this budget that does strike that balance between needs and resources and what we can't predict right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Bond, your comments?
Thanks, Mayor Little. I was looking for a purple hand there, but I wasn't able to find it quick enough. But again, I'd like to thank Mr. Wardell, Mr. Danilek, and their whole team.
I know it's a ridiculous thing, the contrast of the hands and stuff, but I think Councillor came twice, so I apologize.
Yeah, and their whole team. And I think the one thing that's important to note, because if you look at other jurisdictions around the region, there's often a lot of contentious debate and motions and counter motions at budget time. And I think the one thing that I've noticed on my term on council here, and I've learned through my experience working with staff, is that the budget is really the fiscal reflection of all the priorities that council sets and all the decisions and the past decisions and the plans that council has supported and continues to support. So, we don't see a lot of a debate here at budget around this, the substantive issues. Because council has had those debates at other times. We had the debates and discussions and the public engagement around council directions. We had those debates and discussions and public engagement around the OCP and our action plan. And so a lot of the what forms the budget is those plans, and it is well informed and has a lot of research and a lot of engagement behind it. And this is and it should be the fiscal reflection of the community and council's aspirations for the community, both in the services that we provide, but also in the way that we spend the funds of the residents. So it's a big wrap up, and sometimes it can be, when you look at a budget and you're not a financial person, maybe those links aren't necessarily clear. But I think the presentation that staff have been doing, breaking it down in the budget and in the financial workbook by service area, breaking down capital projects in the timelines again along the the identified priorities of council, helps communicate to the community that council is focusing on the things that we said we were going to focus on. So I think that presentation has been important, and on my time on council, it has definitely improved, and the communication of the alignment between council decisions and the fiscal impacts of those decisions has definitely improved. So, and it will continue to improve as we continue to evolve. So appreciate all the work that's been done on this, and I am in support.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor Bond. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, a lot of things that I was going to mention have already been mentioned, but the one other thing I'd just like to put a little emphasis on, and a big thank you to our staff, and perhaps maybe the general public or the taxpayer isn't aware of this, but our finance staff has worked very, very hard. They're involved in committees at provincial and municipal sharing committees, and they're involved all the CFOs. There's a committee with all the municipal CFOs, and they've been working very, very hard for a long time to get the things that they've mentioned on the bottom of page 195, to get the government, the provincial government, and to address issues such as property assessment methodologies, like how our assessments have gone crazy, somewhat for not the appropriate reasons. The appeals process is skewed sometimes and not necessarily fair, and growth paying for growth, and local government roles and responsibilities, the amount of downloading that's happening onto the local municipalities. So I'd just like to, besides preparing the budget, I'd like to also thank the financial staff for the work that they do behind the scenes on those committees, trying to get some reform on some of these things and some fairness back into some of these things. So just kudos to the staff, and please keep working on those things.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Forbes. I see no further speakers at this time, so I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council. And yeah, moving along to item 8.8. Oh, sorry, I skipped 8.7. Sorry about that, Council. Moving on to item 8.7, which is 1565 to 1589 Rupert Street, bylaws 8526, 8527, 8528, and 8529. This is a matter returning from a public hearing. Do we have any further comments from staff on the matter? I think that's largely all been taken care of at the public hearing process. Mr. Hartford?
Your Worship, there were no follow-up questions from the hearing, so I have no comments on the application.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes, your hand is up. Do you have a motion? Oh, that's from before. Council, is there would somebody like to move a motion? Councillor Forbes, you have a motion? Oh, no, there we go. Councillor Hanson is going to move it, seconded by Councillor Curran. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Very pleased to support this particular rezoning of 1565 to 1589 Rupert Street. The proposal includes 95 rental units, of which 19 will be non-market and affordable units. I believe this to be an excellent site for this kind of housing, and I believe this kind of housing to be badly needed by our community. The non-market component is aimed at those with incomes of 30 to 85,000 per year, which is a cohort in acute housing need in North Vancouver District. Given the proximity to transit and the focus of affordability as the goal of this proposal, I questioned, and I did earlier, the need for 69 parking spaces. And I'd asked council to consider whether for these types of proposals, rental projects and affordable rental projects, whether the time has perhaps come to consider projects without any parking whatsoever. However, that would not be a barrier to me supporting this proposal. I also note that 760 notices were delivered in the neighborhood without receiving any comments or questions. I also note that there was a virtual unanimous support at the public hearing for this proposal. I believe that projects such as this do have widespread community support. I note the comments of one person in the public input that some sites get rezoned for this type of valuable housing and are then not developed within a reasonable time frame. And I'd ask us to consider whether we would wish, perhaps not on this proposal, but on other proposals coming forward, to make rezoning conditional on completing the construction without delay, so that our overall development plan materializes. And then of course, there's also the issue of the percentage of affordable units. One can always debate about that and say that we should have more than 20%. I'll leave that debate to another day, except to note that there are some proposals occurring around Metro now with more than 20% affordable units for different reasons, and it's something for us to strive for. But on its face, I believe this to be an excellent proposal, and I'm very, very pleased to support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hanson. Seconder on the matter.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, also pleased to support this. The 19 non-market units, the estimated rents for the 1 bedroom, $1,280 a month, 2 bedroom, $1,662, and there's 1 3-bedroom, which at $1,825. I know there's nothing close to that that you could find for a brand new 3-bedroom apartment. Those are rare to come by. So pleased to see this all rental building, and just wanted to reiterate its alignment with many of the actions laid out in our targeted official community plan review. Priority action 1, which is achieving town and village centers that deliver low carbon, compact and diverse housing and transportation choices. I would, to Councillor Hanson's point, I would be happy to support a proposal with no parking, but we have not yet had a developer come forward and want to build that yet. Although I do think, we're getting there. We're moving more closely in that direction. But there has to be other investments into alternative modes of transportation to realize that vision. And briefly, the other priorities are number 3, to prioritize rental, social, and supportive housing projects. Priority action 5, to increase housing diversity to support a range of incomes, household types, and accessibility needs close to, within and close to town and village centers. And then the last 2, to create a continuous and connected network of walking and cycling routes to encourage more people of all ages and abilities to walk and cycle. And lastly, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from buildings, transportation, and waste to address the climate emergency. So I think this checks off many of those boxes, and I'm pleased to support it.
Yeah, I will also be supporting this development. I think that it's in keeping with the neighboring area, which is obviously under state of redevelopment, and again, also has relatively close proximity to our transportation hub at Phibbs Exchange. It's not too far away. It's a relatively short walk away from that. And I'm glad to see that we are able to, also complete another portion of the Green Spine project as well through this space. So I'll be supportive of this project. Next speaker I have is Councillor Bond.
Thanks, Mayor Little, and thank you, Councillor Hanson and Councillor Kern, for laying out many of the technical aspects of the project and how they align with many of the policies that Council has passed and that we've committed to. I'd just like to say that I'm also supportive of this project and excited to see these 95 new homes being approved should Council do that. Looks like looks like it might. You know, a couple of years down the road when these homes are built, welcoming those people into the Lynn Creek neighborhood. I think this is a changing neighborhood, and I think there's a lot of people that have moved into this neighborhood with an expectation on what it's going to look like, and this is one piece of the puzzle. As was mentioned, the green spine, other homes and amenities that have been recently approved or are nearing completion are all important part for the residents in this neighborhood, and welcoming another 95 households is going to be a great addition. And just similar to my comments on the last proposal, the non-market homes that are proposed here for the 1 bedrooms, they're about $1,000 less per month than what's currently available in the neighborhood. The 2 bedrooms are about $1,100 to $1,200 less expensive per month than what's currently available. And the 1 3-bedroom, although it's 1 3-bedroom, is almost $1,400 to $1,600 less expensive than what's available on the market. So that's going to make a huge impact for the households, the families, the people that can access those homes when they're constructed. So very supportive of this project, and I will be voting in favor.
Thank you. Councillor Back, your comments?
Thanks. Again, mine will be brief. I appreciate everyone's comments before me, of which I agree with all of the points that have been made. You know, we're starting to see the pieces of this town center start to come into place, and this is just another one of those pieces that, to Councillor Bond's point, you know, a couple of years down the road, we're going to start to see people moving into some of these homes, and it's going to start to have a real feel down there. We're going to start to see the vibrancy of what this town center can be like. I'm also supportive of the green spine element of this. I'm really looking forward to one day, you know, being able to see that park, you know, complete. And purpose-built rental is important right now in any part of our community, but particularly where it's located so close to transit. So again, with this public hearing, we saw largely almost virtually all support for this project, including from one business owner who talked about, you know, how this project would impact, you know, people that are working in our community. So again, that's the concern that I hear regularly from the business owners that I talk to. So really supportive and glad to see this one moving ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Council, I don't see any other speakers on the matter. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council. Moving along to item 8.8. This is the response to the 2021 Community Heritage Advisory Committee update. And it's Jason Smith's report, but I believe we have opening comments from Tina Atba. Ms. Atba?
Thank you very much, Mayor Little. Good evening again, all members of council and members of the public. This is a follow-up to the presentation that our Community Heritage Advisory Committee presented to you on October 4th. The presentation, if you will remember, outlined some of the successes that they have found with heritage preservation in the district to date, but also they took the time to outline some of their concerns. The committee put together about 15 recommendations or suggestions, and they can be grouped into 4 general areas. One is how to reduce barriers to people to preserve their heritage properties and increase incentives to allow heritage redevelopment. Another one of their areas was around maintenance and how to regulate maintenance of heritage properties in particular. Thirdly, how to increase the number of legally protected properties in the district. There are only 13. And finally, to promote heritage education and awareness. Staff reviewed all of the suggestions, and the report has more detail, including a line-by-line response. Fortunately, many of the suggestions from the committee do align with actions that Council has already approved through the Heritage Strategic Plan. I'll share a couple of examples. One relates to improving the Heritage Revitalization process, or HRA for short. The HRA is a voluntary agreement between a municipality and a property owner. Similar to a rezoning, it allows a municipality to grant variances to zoning in exchange for heritage protection. The process is costly, as the committee noted, it's poorly defined, and the outcomes for the applicant are often uncertain. One aspect that the Heritage Strategic Plan has suggested is that an HRA information package or guide would help to clarify the process and expectations and thus support heritage conservation and redevelopment. So that work is underway. The Heritage Committee was also concerned about the neglect of heritage properties and suggested that a specific maintenance bylaw for heritage properties be considered. The Local Government Act, however, has limitations on where this can be applied, and it can only be to legally protected properties, which through agreements we tend to look at and manage the maintenance in any respect. An area where there's lots of alignment between the committee members and staff is on the value of heritage education and awareness. And what we want to be looking at is working together with the committee on improving the website. They have an interest in heritage recognition plaques, for example. So we'll work together and be guided by not only the committee's work plan, but also the Heritage Strategic Plan. Continuing to implement the plan is a key focus for staff in 2022. And through this work, we will be able to tackle some of the concerns and suggestions raised by the committee. The Heritage Strategic Plan is a 10-year plan from 2019 when council adopted it to 2029. And I feel proud of the actions that the district has taken to date. One of these, the Heritage Grants Program, broadening last year, not only in scope to the type of work that could be covered, but also a substantial change to the budget. I know I can speak for our staff who work with the committee that we enjoy working with the group, and we look forward to continuing this and finding new ways, I think, to manage and maintain and protect the district's heritage, which is not just our built resources, but our cultural and natural resources as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Atfa. Councillor Bond, you're the staff, or you're the council liaison on this committee. Would you like to move receipt of the report?
Yes, I will.
And I will happily second. Councillor Bond, your comments?
Yeah, I think the staff report has come forward and lays out staff's response to the concerns of the committee in an appropriate way. I know our next committee meeting is actually tomorrow, and the staff response will likely be a topic of discussion. So just maybe reserve any more comments on that until the committee gets a chance to read the report and have a discussion about it.
Thank you, Councillor. And just my own comments on the matter. I attended one of their meetings earlier in the year, or perhaps late last year, and went over the questions that they raised in the regular meeting of council when they made their presentation back in the fall. And it was a good discussion. I mean, there was a lot of interest in how we could make the HRAs flow smoother. The challenge is that they have to have buy-in from the neighborhood, and some of them are quite a dramatic change to the property. And also, exactly as you said, because you have to go through so much of the process before you actually know the decision, it becomes prohibitive to even go through the process. And even some of the developments we've seen that got an HRA in process, in the end didn't end up building in line with the HRA and instead tried to come up with something different after that process had been completed. And so it's been a challenging tool, and because of the way you have to do all of the work up front, it is always going to be a heavy risk borne by the developer in those cases until they get a final decision. So we all wanted more from the HRAs, but they are a challenge to be able to pull off because they do tend to be only economically viable when you make a dramatic change in a single family neighborhood, which is of course always a challenge for us because we try to keep the character of a community together. But yes, I want to thank staff for all of their work to be able to bring these matters together, and thank the council, or the Heritage Commission, for inviting me to come and address matters there. I thought it went rather well. But we'll see, as Councillor Bond's going to go to the meeting tomorrow and get any other comments that we may have about the response. But I'm happy to support receipt. Any other members of council wishing to address the matter? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question on the matter. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Next item up for discussion this evening is item 8.9. This is the appointment of external auditors. I don't know if we have a comment from staff. Mr. Wardell, you're here. Do you
Sure,
have any comments?
through your worship, I can speak briefly to that. Staff have proposed and the Finance and Audit Committee of Council has recommended to Council the extension of the external auditors for another 4 years. Essentially, workload impacts both during the pandemic and what we anticipate post-pandemic are significant. And there's a new PSAB accounting standard called Asset Retirement Obligations that are coming out. This is a significant organization-wide endeavor that involves most departments, primarily engineering, finance, legal, and the planning groups, but it is a large group of work. It effectively requires us to look at all of our assets, plan their future retirements, and book the cost impacts of that now. Okay, and I will say that the Public Sector Accounting Board did defer that for a year just to give us some time to get over the pandemic, but they have they were not changing the date, so it's coming. The continuity of our auditors through this process is key. They consult with us through this work. Training a new group of auditors, getting them to understand our businesses, going through the post-pandemic period, and looking at all our assets at the same time, we find that just particularly challenging. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wardell. I'll be supporting the staff recommendation. Is there a seconder on the matter? Okay, I've got Councillor Bond as a seconder. Just my comments. I'm chair of the Finance and Audit Committee, and we had a good go around on this entire presentation. I do support the extension of the auditor from KPMG. I do think, though, that we do have to always consider changing either the processes or the delivery group for audits for an organization our size. Over time, I think that it's something we have to consider because it's not just about complacency, it's about making sure that we're viewing this organization from different perspectives. So I hope that we can consider at the end of this time, maybe changing up either the process significantly or perhaps considering a different partner for the auditing at that time, because I just think it's important for us to be able to look at these issues from a different perspective. As you do the same process over and over again, you're missing the same things. And so it seems to be an ever increasing risk for your organization unless you are intentionally changing up the processes and looking at them from different angles. So I hope that we can address that in future years. On the asset retirement obligation, we're going to have to find some time in a council workshop to have Mr. Wardell go over this. I found it incredibly helpful to spend time at the Finance and Audit Committee to go over this. This will dramatically change some aspects of our financial reporting. It's also going to be very confusing at times of when you're retiring something, when you continue a facility, when you don't just end a facility and end its time and it's no longer the district there, it's clean cut how to do it. But it's when you are continuing certain aspects of it, when you build a new building, how you retire it in the process, how it's going to show up in your books. So I really hope that we can have Mr. Wardell take some time in a council workshop to better explain that to the whole group, and because I think it's going to be important for us to understand. It's going to create some anomalies in our financial planning over the near future. I see Mr. Stewart followed by Mr. Wardell. Mr. Stewart, your comments.
Your worship, I'll be very brief. We have had auditors for a long time, and I just want to assure council that doesn't mean just because we've had the same auditors, we don't have a lot of discussions around a lot of issues. There are a lot of very contentious issues that come out of Ottawa, as Andy has mentioned. And so I just want to assure council that there's a very robust system in place for audit in North Vancouver.
Yes, and I'm happy to support the recommendation today. Mr. Wardell?
Through your worship, I'll be very brief. This is only the second time that I'm aware of that we've extended auditors. Traditionally, auditors are tendered and will be tendered competitively at the end of each term. And at the end of this fourth-year term, that will take place.
Great. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Councillor Bond.
Maybe just a clarification from Mr. Wardell, but I was going to speak about that. The competitive process 4 years ago, when the current auditing team was selected as the most competitive bid and most technically qualified to be our auditors, included in that competitive process and that contract an option to extend for 4 years. Is that correct?
Through your worship, that is correct. When an audit is tendered, there's always an option to extend.
Okay, I think that makes sense, because I know there's, generally, as Mayor Little elaborated, potential concerns about the competitivity or competition and fair and open processes for tendering contracts, especially longer term contracts like the one that we're talking about today. But that was an option, and that was part of the competitive process that included an option for renewal. And the other thing I think that is important to know is that every year the Finance and Audit Committee does audit planning, audit pre-planning, and reporting. And so those gaps or those repetitive processes, by having an auditor for a longer period of time, are addressed at every year when the auditor comes forward with their audit plan, and the Finance and Audit Committee has the ability to add different questions, add different focuses, and question the audit team, both from staff and the external auditors, on their processes and focuses for the year. So the Finance and Audit Committee has that ability, and that those meetings do take place. And so I'm confident that given the explanations from staff here, that it's a wise decision to extend this for another 4 years.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. I see no further speakers from council at this time. Okay, I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 8.10. This item, we had several speakers at the front end of the meeting, and we have one speaker signed up to speak to the item. And so I'm going to invite Peter Teven to speak at this time. I see Peter has joined us virtually this evening. Mr. Teven, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. And just before you start the clock, can I please echo the comments made by Mr. Colbert earlier, that I really think it's advisable for people who have signed up to speak at public meetings to admit them as panelists with camera and microphone off at the earliest possible point in the meeting. It's and I thank staff for putting me in during the last item, so I was ready, but it's quite a disconcerting process to get converted over midstream. And with that, I'll begin my comments. Thank you. Yes, Peter Tevan, 1900 Block, Indian River Crescent, and I'm speaking against the item 8.10, which I paraphrase as the legislated support for plant-based initiatives in food. Your Worship and Council, I cannot imagine that this item will get 4 of the 7 necessary votes to become policy. But then again, I have to consider that over the last 3.5 years, at least 4 of you have voted to control what we build and what we live in, and how we heat our homes. You voted to control where we live, where we work and shop, control how we transit from place to place, control where we park our cars and how much parking is available, control how much we pay for things, and when we have to wake up to put our garbage out, control who, how, and when people will shovel the district's sidewalks before the plows come and cover them back up again, and control how and when we water our lawns. You're even using satellite imagery to control and monitor the trees we grow on our own private property. And now you want to control what we eat. A week or so ago, I wrote to you all about the snow shoveling bylaws, and I opined that you didn't seem to understand how to motivate people. I asserted that you don't appear to understand the difference between carrots and sticks, in that you seem to think a stick is an incentive and a penalty is just a bigger stick. And the reason I said that is that throughout the last 3.5 years, you've consistently led with legislation first, and then maybe followed up with consultation and education. I believe you've had it backwards all along. If, regarding tonight's motion, you had led with an outreach program trying to encourage people to eat less meat and left it at that, you might have been okay. Better still to have left this to the school system. I cannot imagine how 4 of 7 of you will see fit to enact such bad policy. And how will all these vegetable-based foods get here to the North Shore? Because they sure aren't grown here, certainly not in any commercial capacity, which makes such policy decisions, frankly, tokenisms at best. But there's another aspect to this that you maybe haven't considered. Would not the author of this report be the first one to say that the first step to everything is to consult our local First Nations and to respect their traditions? And if you had consulted the Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish people, they might tell you that their traditional diet has consisted of the following. Proteins and fats predominate, with seasonal access only to roots and berries. Traditional foods include deer, elk, bear, crab, seal, whale, shellfish, salmon, cod, and halibut. Hardly vegan. With your votes tonight, do you intend to issue a slap to the face of our local First Nations regarding their traditional diet? That would be colonialism at its most righteous. In closing, let me ask those who would support this the following question. What aspects remain of our lives that you don't wish to control? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Teven. And I will just comment on one aspect. That I think that the scope of what's proposed tonight is about municipal, our own municipal purchasing, not the municipalities purchasing or of it. Perhaps in your opening remarks, Councillor Kern, you are the report giver, and I'll take you as the mover of the motion. If you'd like to speak to the item off the top, perhaps you could clarify that.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Little. Yeah, so this was brought forward in response to the presentation, which was pre-COVID. If everyone remembers, back in July of 2019, the Vancouver Humane Society had worked with students from Sutherland Secondary, and they this was kind of the second piece of it. Council did support Meatless Mondays, and this is an opportunity for us at the municipal level to demonstrate leadership and creativity. And this is just simply asking us to have staff look at what it would mean for the municipality, directly what we procure. And admittedly, it is much less than Vancouver and some of the other C40 cities that have taken a lot of initiative to advance more healthy eating, which is in line with the Canadian dietary guidelines. So yeah, just to clarify, this is looking at targeting a minimum 20% reduction in foods that the municipality procures. So in days where we were meeting, we would have dinner on in council. There's other events, staff might have events, and so this is a way to sort of inspire people to share more plant-based recipes. And yeah, so this isn't community-wide, it's just at the corporate level, which is a great way to show leadership and to get some ideas going. And the second part of this motion is for council to direct staff to report back on ways to increase awareness, both within the organization and throughout the community around the health and environmental co-benefits of increasing the intake of plant-based foods. So I think it is important to be clear about what this is and what it isn't. And let's see, I'm just going back through. Yeah, I'm happy to share some of the report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They have a lot to say about the importance of at the status quo. I believe by 2050, it's looking like we'll increase emissions by 38% when all countries, including Canada, have agreed to at least net zero, if not zero emissions. So we're not on the right track. I think it is important to talk about how important it is to localize our food systems. And that's something that our Climate Advisory Committee pointed out. And that's something that there is lots of potential for us to do a better job of, especially for plant-based foods. And there's lots of interest in our community to have more year-round local produce grown locally. There's actually really exciting work happening at both Squamish Nation and Tsleil-Waututh Nation around local agriculture. I think it is important to always have cultural sensitivity, and that's why this isn't. I think that certainly is important to have. And yeah, everything else is kind of laid out in the reports. This aligns with other municipal policies that we have, including our community energy and emissions plan, which also looks at consumption-based emissions. And this is an important part of that. And also, as I mentioned, aligns with Canada's dietary guidelines, which support increasing plant-based foods for health reasons, which I have laid out in the report. So look forward to hearing what everyone else has to say about this, and happy to answer any more questions.
Thank you, Councillor Kern. Councillor Bond, your comments? Oh, are you the seconder? I need that acknowledgement.
Yeah, I can second it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Councillor Curran has laid out the reasons for the report and how it aligns with many district policies already. I can just speak from personal experience. When I was first elected to council in 2014, I was the only vegetarian. And there was actually no food that I could eat when we had council dinners. And so for a number of months, I actually had to bring my own meals to council because there was no food. There was no food that was suitable for my choice to be a vegetarian. And so I think one of the speakers at the beginning of the meeting put this very well. Different people have different dietary needs and or different choices. Councillor Curran's report lays out why choosing more plant-based foods aligns with a lot of the aspirations that we have as a municipality in terms of reducing carbon emissions, and the Humane Society has laid out another set of reasons, but asking staff to look in for a 20% reduction 20% reduction, replacing animal-based foods with plant-based ones seems completely appropriate. And I think one thing that is important is if we are going to ask, if we are going to go beyond and do education on the benefits of this, as a municipality, we should at least take the action ourselves, and we should at least be willing to be leaders and to look at what we can do first and show that example and use that as an example in the community of why and how this can actually be a great choice, and it can be a great way for us to meet a lot of our different goals. And I think Councillor Curran's laid that out well in her report.
For my comments, I agree that it can be a great choice, and it can be a very healthy choice for people to have a more plant-based diet, and I think that that's advisable. I think we should be raising awareness of that generally in the community. But the question that I'm wrestling with is that raising awareness versus stigmatizing people's diet piece. I mean, when Councillor Bond was the only member of the council that was vegetarian, he had a separate box that was off to the side, and it had his name on it, and it was a little bit stigmatized that he was a vegetarian and largely we were serving meat-based proteins at our council meetings. And I think there was a general consensus that we wanted to get rid of that stigma. We wanted to allow that to be normalized and brought in, and make sure that there were high quality, nutritious options for people who had either a plant-based diet or not. And so we added options. We went out and we tried to make it easier for people to have that as an option. And it's not just the council members, it's the senior staff that participate in our council meetings and the clerk's office that participate. The problem is, I don't know that I want to replace that with stigmatizing people for having some meat in their diet as well at this time. And I think that's the eventual end of this policy. I think some of the dialogue from the Humane Society has been pretty clear that their intent is to stigmatize meat consumption in our community. And so I have a very great concern about that. I generally fall down on the sides of giving people options and giving people education and information to make good decisions based on. And that's not what I think this is. I think in some parts it's intended to be that way, but in some parts I think it falls short. I think that it would also be to some degree hypocritical for me to expect the 8 members of our staff that are currently have a dinner brought in for them to force them to be on a lower meat protein meal than I would have for myself necessarily. And council may not know that, but that's where we're at. We haven't, for the last 2 years, we have not been having council dinners. Our food procurement has dropped off the map almost entirely. Our committees don't have food at them. We haven't been hosting public events where we've had major food brought in, paid for by the municipality. We have only about 8 members of staff, possibly a member of council here or there, that are ordering in some food when their schedules don't permit it, when they're working a very long day and have to continue on to the council meeting. But our food buy has gotten so small that I have to challenge whether it's a good use of our staff resources to be doing an investigation into the impact here. I expect, even with good education, that as council returns to its regular business, as the community returns to public events, that both our consumption of plant-based products and our consumption of meat proteins are probably going to go up. And so I'm at a loss here. I don't think that we advance things by stigmatizing people who choose to have a portion of their diet with meat in it. I fully support giving good educational materials to help people make informed decisions on their diet, specifically on the carbon impact that elements of their diet may have. And there are some plant-based options that actually have some terrible impacts as well, because they're shipped from all over the world. And I don't think that was contemplated in some of the comments earlier today, whereas most of our meat products are sourced relatively locally. And so I'm not going to be supportive of this because I think it would be hypocritical for me too, and also because I think it has the ultimate end of stigmatizing people for having meat-based proteins in their diet. So I will be opposed. The next speaker I have is Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not going to be in favor of this either, and I have some of the same concerns as you do, but I also have some other concerns. I don't think it's the role of municipal government to be telling people, and I know this is, right now we're talking about just in the district, but we all know that once a door starts to get opened, it'll get pushed open farther and farther. So whether it's just the council members and committee members, I don't think we should be telling people how they should eat. It may be healthier, it may not be healthier, but I just don't think that's our role. Our role as a government is to provide, services, make sure garbage is picked up, streets are cleaned, make sure that we keep our infrastructure in good repair, transportation, all those kinds of things are what our everyday job is supposed to be about. I think this is an overreach, much like a lot of other things that I've thought recently are overreach. If anything, I would be fully supportive of an education program to inform people, but not to force people and it's not even force. When we have our dinners at council meeting, everybody gets an option to order what they want to order. And if you want to order vegan or vegetarian, you can. If you want to order meat, you can. So nobody's getting deprived. And I'd just like to correct something. I think the conception of the district supported Meatless Monday. I can only speak from how I was involved in that. And it wasn't an official decision. It was a suggestion by a councillor that we have a Meatless Monday once a month. And we all thought, hey, whatever, we'll try it. And we knew that person, that's the kind of diet they had. And we were all trying to go along and get along. And those of us that didn't like Meatless Mondays didn't eat. We came home after the meeting and made something to eat if we hadn't ordered something instead of the Meatless Monday. So nobody was forcing anybody to do anything, and it wasn't an official acceptance of Meatless Mondays. The other thing is there are medical conditions that do require was speaking to someone just recently. There are medical conditions that do require that you not eat plant-based before you go in for certain surgeries, and that you eat meat. So there are all kinds of ramifications right now to how your diet is and how it helps you. I think what a person eats and their health condition is between their doctor and them. I don't think it's between their government and them. So I don't support this. I think that it's a overreach, and Mayor Little, I think you put it well when you said that some of the meat is produced locally, and we have more control over local produce and meats. But a lot of our stuff a lot of our plant-based comes from Brazil, or comes from Mexico, comes from the US, and we don't have any way to control any kind of possible contamination or fertilizer or other things that are used in those things. So I think we should all just kind of learn to let people live a little bit and not try to control every aspect sort of their lives. And that includes even if it's just counselors. Thank you.
Councillor Forbes, Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'd like to begin by thanking Councillor Kern for bringing the motion, and I absolutely respect the spirit of the motion and what she's trying to accomplish, and I thank everyone who's spoken. I'm not going to be voting for the motion, but it's because of a very specific concern that I have. The motion calls for council to direct staff to investigate reducing the annual volume of animal-based foods. Now, my concern is this: at least at the moment, the amount of North Vancouver District spending on the procurement of food is a very small number. I made an effort today to find out what that number is, but let us assume that number is $10,000. I think that would probably be on the high side. So the reduction of that by 20% is, if my number is anything like correct, a reduction of $2,000 in spending on animal-based foods. The amount of staff time that's involved in trying to achieve that outcome is, in my view, just not a provident use of staff time. So from my point of view, I absolutely support all the goals that are set out here. I absolutely support the aspirations that are set out in the report, but I don't believe at this time anyway, this to be a strategic use of staff time in terms of securing the goals of that are set out here. So that will be why I'm not voting for it. I simply would like the staff to be working on other projects where a greater impact can be achieved towards these goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I think we've already shown leadership in regards to supporting Meatless Monday and being open to alternatives. I fully concur with Councillor Hanson's comments. I have no problem in regards to supporting offering, these choices, but what people eat is a personal choice, and but leading from example in the municipality with what we utilize as a government in the small events that we host. We often will host with a selection of hors d'oeuvres for volunteer receptions or special committee events. And we can certainly, I think we already do, incorporate a wide variety of different options for people, knowing that, consumption is a personal choice to be able to accommodate as many people as we can. But I don't agree that we should be spending any more time on investigating, the consumption of meat in the municipality. So for those reasons, I concur with Councillor Fort, the intended of offering choices. And I think we already have reduced or increased our availability of plant-based options for those events and council dinners when we have them.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. The next speaker I have is Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think what's being asked for in this report, and thank you, Councillor Kern, for bringing it forward, is a fairly reasonable ask. I mean, I don't think we're talking about a huge amount of staff time to investigate what reducing our procurement of more plant-based food would look like. And I think it's the way I read it is talking about 20%. So that's still leaving lots of options for people to eat, and again, we're talking about, the district's procurement of food. It's not the whole community, and we're not telling everybody how they can eat or what their diet needs to look like. But I think in terms of leading by example, and trying to encourage, more plant-based alternatives and plant-based diets, I don't see this as a huge investment of staff time. And then the second piece in terms of, educating the community and raising awareness around the benefits of increasing your intake of plant-based foods, I think that's a good thing. I think we can all agree. And I'm not a vegetarian. I certainly have tried to eat more plant-based in recent years. And for health issues, I really tried to look at where I can introduce more vegetarian and options and plant-based alternatives to my diet. And so I definitely see the benefits, even though I'm not quite prepared to give up meat altogether. So I do support this motion. I think it's, as I said, not going to require a huge amount of time to investigate when we are talking about, just food procured in the district and what is a fairly small number, as has been highlighted.
Great. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Bond.
Yeah, I'll just comment. I don't necessarily understand where the fear of control or stigma or forcing people to do anything is coming in here. When we have programs that encourage people to increase their walking by 20% or reduce an activity, we don't usually have concerns about stigma or control. And stigma is usually associated with activity that is not the dominant activity. So I'm not sure how we get a stigma by making a purchasing policy to reduce the amount of a certain product that we buy, making that a negative stigma towards people that still continue to consume that product. There obviously has been stigma about people that choose to eat plant-based products in the past. I've been a vegetarian for a long time, experienced that. Doesn't faze me anymore. Right? It's been a long time, but I can't see how having a policy to reduce the amount of animal-based foods is anywhere close to being stigma. And then I think if the number and the food buy in the municipality is small, then the investigation is very short. And it can be a very simple, like when we come back to council, we continue to have meatless Mondays, because that's 20% of our previous thing. So I just don't think the concerns necessarily expressed are as catastrophic as have they been presented. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Kern.
Thank you for that and for folks' comments. I just wondered if it sounds like there's quite a unanimous support for the second part that council, so I just wondered if we could bifurcate the two recommendations separately. And then, yeah, I think that there's a lot of this seems to be based in fear and also misinformation. Like this is 80%. We're talking about 80% being whatever it wants to be. So this is a very minimal ask. And so I'm surprised to hear what seems to be a lot of fear around it. This is again aligned with science, and it's certainly aligned with what the Canada's dietary guidelines support. So I think this is the direction that we all need to go in, and it's healthy for our environment and healthy for ourselves. And it's not, it's a very minimal ask, and staff may even find that we're already doing this when they do that. But I do think it would be a very limited amount of time. I am mindful of the amount of time that we have staff spend on anything. And I think food is one of the very important things that will come up as we look more towards consumption based emissions. And as I said, it's already, there's policy, including our community energy and emissions plan that mentions the food we eat specifically. So this is something we're going to have to tackle. And I'm disappointed that council doesn't seem to be supportive of this, what I think is a very reasonable ask, but perhaps we could bifurcate as a next option.
Okay, thank you. I'm willing to do that. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you. Just to say that I would support the second branch of the recommendation if that were separated from the first. So the bifurcation might be a good idea.
Okay, thank you very much. I will respond to just one aspect of it, that if you oppose it, you must fear it. I think that's a ridiculous position to take. I think that people should be allowed to debate a matter and have different opinions without being called that they must be making their decision out of fear. I think everybody articulated their reasons for it, and characterizing them as fear-based I don't think is fair. The reality is most of the money that the district spends on food is already going to be on plant-based, because almost all of our food budget is going to be, almost all of the clerk staff that have been buying through for their evening meal here, their salad bowls and or they're mostly plant-based options. When we did have council dinners back in the day, as I said, we had already turned the corner and made a significant change in making sure that we had high quality vegetarian options as the main in many cases. And so even if the budget was $10,000, it wouldn't be a 20% reduction from that. It would be less than half of that is actually not plant-based, and then it would be a reduction of that portion. And so again, it's just the minimizing thing. I hear the debates. I don't really want to spend the time on it with staff at this time. I just more generally have the position that maybe in the 70s and 80s, the position was the government has no role in the bedrooms of the community. Maybe it needs to be said that the government has no roles in the kitchens of the community for now. But I don't think that just because you articulate a position that is opposed, that means you must be afraid of everything. I don't think that's fair. Councillor Forbes, your comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I was just going to say that the biggest thing I have with this is exactly what you just said there at the end, is that I just don't think that government should be deciding this. Government has decided cigarettes aren't healthy for people either, but they haven't stopped selling them. And I also think even if we buy plant-based food from Delta or Surrey or Langley out in the more agricultural areas, we then have to truck it all in to North Vancouver. So, you know, it's trade-offs, but my main thing is I just don't think this is the area that we should be getting into. And I think people should have choice, and choice of what you put in your body should be the individual person's choice. And again, I'll emphasize, even though the report says just for council or just for the district, we know that it does mention the staff to report back both with the organization and throughout the community. So you can kind of read between those lines and know that this is going to go farther if it gets accepted. But I still think people have a right to choice. And if you choose to be unhealthy and not eat a certain way, that should be your right. Thank you.
Councillor Forbes. Okay, Council, I've had a request to bifurcate the motion, which I think is reasonable and that they stand effectively on their own. And so I'm going to grant that request. And so first I'm going to call the question on the first paragraph, which is the council directs staff to investigate reducing the annual volume of animal-based foods procured by the municipality, targeting an annual minimum 20% reduction to be replaced with plant-based alternatives by the end of 2022. That is now on the floor, and that has been moved and seconded. And so I'll now call the question on that one. All in favor? All opposed? And it has Mayor Little, Councillor Forbes, Councillor Hanson opposed. It ties to defeat, although I think we have lost Councillor Muri, and she had spoken against it anyway. And so now we're going to go on to the second paragraph, which is that council directs staff to report back on ways to increase awareness both within the organization and throughout the community around the health and environmental co-benefits of increasing the intake of plant-based foods. I'll call the question on that now. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries with Councillor Forbes opposed. Thank you very much, Council. Okay, Council, we don't always have opportunities for reports at the end of meetings, but I do have a sad report to start off this evening's report with, and that is that our friend who is a regular participant with the District of North Vancouver, Monica Craver, unfortunately passed away last week, and it was last Monday. Her funeral was held on Thursday, and I just wanted to say that it was a beautiful ceremony, and that Monica will always be remembered for her incredible advocacy for people with hearing impairments in our community, and also for her tireless advocacy for our parks and the critters that call those places safe spaces in our community. On behalf of the council, I did express our regrets at the loss for the Craver family. And as I said, it was a very touching and moving memorial that we participated in. Council, I'm going to go to members of council for their reports. Councillor Forbes.
I'm getting caught off guard because you mistook my vote on the last vote because I guess my hand was slow going up. But anyway, just want to say that I attended the funeral services for Monica Craver, and it was lovely, and she did do an awful lot of work and was requested to sit on a couple of district committees, and she was tireless at research on different subjects for information and research for the district. So yeah, that was a shock. The other thing is I sit on the Rec Commission board, and so we've had meetings around the Harry Jerome project and staging and what certain things will look like. And I guess if anybody has seen lately, 23rd Street lost all of its cherry trees, which is really, really sad. And I know that they couldn't keep them all, but I was hoping that they might put them in a ball and put them to the side maybe, or replant them somewhere else, not just destroy them. So anyway, that's on that. And I can't remember offhand now other committees. It's been a while since I've been reported on them. So I'll pass it to whoever next wants to report.
Okay, the next report that I see is Councillor Bond.
Thanks, Mayor Little. I just wanted to report on my attendance at the Metro Vancouver Housing Committee. Last meeting was March 3rd, and we ran out of time at our last meeting. Two items that I thought would be informative for council is we received a presentation from Jill Atke, who's the president of the BC Nonprofit Housing Association, talking about an update on nonprofit housing development across British Columbia. And right now there's 300 buildings consisting of 30,000 nonprofit and co-op homes that are being planned for in different stages of development in the province's current 10-year plan on housing. But even with that number, it doesn't come close to what the peaks of nonprofit housing development were in the 1970s and 1980s, when approximately 10% of all homes that were built were nonprofit of various forms and various tenures, whether that's co-op or social housing or others. So it seems we got a lot more work to do from all levels of government on nonprofit and social housing. The other report that we had, I thought was of interest to district and district staff, is we had a case study comparison of modular versus wood frame housing. And based on the current market conditions in Metro Vancouver, with some local examples, the traditional construction method is still the least expensive. And so at least at this point in time, while it might be a consideration, Metro Vancouver is not considering doing modular housing just because of the local state of the industry and the cost and risk impacts. So those were two updates.
Mayor Little just stepped out, but he asked that I provide the next update. My update is with respect to my attendance at the Indigenous Relations Committee meeting in Metro Vancouver, which occurred on February the 15th, 2022. And this has been the first regular meeting of council, which I've been able to give this update because of the very late evenings that went on in the earlier meetings of council. Of importance to potentially to this body was an update from Commissioner Haldane of the BC Treaty Commission. She expressed very clearly a shift in philosophy around treaty negotiation in the province of British Columbia and indeed across Canada, whereby the treaty process is moving away from full and final treaties, moving away from a full relinquishment of rights, and instead moving towards an incrementalist approach. Treaties being viewed as flexible living partnerships. Highlighted in this was the co-management agreement between Metro Vancouver and the Tsleil-Waututh Nation over Belcarra Park or the Tamtanixton. This was put forward as a central example of the type of incrementalist approach which will stand in the place of full and final treaty making. So what we can expect across the province is more proposal for individual economic and social benefits, standing instead of full treaty negotiations, and standing instead of a full relinquishment of land rights, which is proving so difficult for so many of the First Nations in their treaty negotiations. So that was the update. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Beck.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just a few updates on a number of events that have happened and meetings that I've attended over the last little while. I, along with yourself, Your Worship, attended the official grand opening of Handsworth School on Friday, March the 4th. There was a number of electeds there, including Education Minister Jennifer Whiteside. Beautiful school, as we could all imagine, and seeing it in person was great. It's just full of windows, and you look out to the north and just look up straight up at Gross. It's absolutely gorgeous. So I encourage everyone to find an opportunity to get there and have a look. But yeah, was pleased to be there and be able to see the brand new high school. I attended the Minova Commission, that's the Museum and Archives meeting on Wednesday, March 9th as the district representative. There's been a bit of staff changes there. We've lost the curator, Barbara Hilden. She's left the museum after just a short time, but she's moved on to a different position. So they are recruiting for a new curator. We've seen an uptick in group bookings and tours now that COVID restrictions are lifting to a large degree, and the cruise ship season is going to kick off in April in full swing. By the sounds of it, we're going to see numbers, like 2019, which was a big year. So that will. We were talking at our last meeting about ways that we can tie in the museum to some of those tours coming off of those ships. I also attended the North Van Chamber board meeting as the district rep on March the 15th. And finally, last Wednesday, March the 16th, I helped do a presentation along with Councillor Curran and Councillor Bond, and yourself, Mayor Little, was in attendance as well for the North Shore Young Civic Forum. And this is a group of 18 to 39-year-olds organized with North Shore Community Resources in conjunction with City Hive. And there was about 30 people there, and they're very keen to learn about local government and local issues. And we gave a Cities 101 and Council 101 presentation to them. And it was the first of several sessions that they'll have over the next several weeks.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I did just want to add my own report. So we have resumed our Meet the Mayor meetings again. We were able to resume them for November, and then the numbers went back down for COVID, went the wrong way again. And so we stopped doing them again, but we're now returned to them. And so I did do one 2 weeks ago in Edgemont, one last week in Seymour, and I've got one tomorrow morning in Lynn Valley. This is just where members of the community are welcome to come out and pitch questions at me. The one in Seymour was well attended, with lots of discussion about pickleball and tennis and Naughton Detour, and also general questions about transportation and transit services in the community. And that's something that I'm going to be resuming, where basically I have pretty much a weekly time in different parts of the community. When we open up the kiosk and community center space down in Lower Capilano coming up in the spring, then I'm going to add some time down there as well. But yes, tomorrow's is at 10 a.m. in Lynn Valley. We'll be meeting there. I also just wanted to note that we have Council of Councils coming up in a little less than 2 weeks. I hope all members of council are able to attend. This is where all the mayors and councils from the Metro Vancouver region get together, mostly virtually in this case likely, but there are some people able to join in person, and to hear the reports from the different departments of Metro Vancouver. And it's very important for members of our council to be informed about those, because they are huge decisions, and you see them on our tax bill. About half of the tax bill this year is going to be from other taxing agencies, including Metro Vancouver. And so it's very important that people are aware of what the impacts are going to be on the utility bills. And so I would encourage every member of council to attend the Council of Council when that comes up in the near future, on April 2nd specifically. But at this point, council, I think, Councillor Forbes, did you have a further report? Hadn't seen your hand there.
Not a further report, but I noticed that Councillor Back had been left off as a possible report. And I was just wondering if there's any report on the Metro Infrastructure Committee.
Sorry, that's not my committee, Councillor Forbes.
Are you not? Are you not? Which
No.
committee are you on Metro?
I'm not on a Metro committee at the moment. I was on the Industrial Lands Task Force, but that's concluded.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't
okay.
realize that. I thought you were on infrastructure. Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, council, we've completed the business of this evening's meeting, and so if somebody will propose adjournment, I will accept. Proposed by Councillor Hanson, I accept. Thank you all very much. The members of the public who stuck with us through the meeting this evening. Thank you to the staff that helped prepare everything for our consideration. And thank you, council, for coming to decisions on some important things in our community. Have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.